welcome. Make sure you go by and get your grilled chicken and green beans and mashed potatoes. We have rolls.
Hey, boys.
We got sweet tea, unsweet tea, and Heinz 57. Alan, that's very healthy. I'm glad to see you're eating healthy.
Yeah, it's just, every day it's like that. Oh, what in the world? What's that UNC thing doing there? Listen, what's that UNC thing doing there?
And then I have a 3 o'clock, a funeral at 4 o'clock, and then I have a 5 o'clock in the city. So I'm available between 1 and 3.
Laura, what are you eating? What's good?
Chicken.
Sam?
I'm speaking to people. Laura Powers, how's it going? That looks delicious. Anyone else? Does anyone else have any announcements today? Someone's listening. Who has an announcement? Laura is trying to talk. Laura, unmute yourself. I'm gonna have some really nice Italian music going on in the background. Hello, Bud. Bud, good to have you with us.
Yeah,
Tommy
hey,
Rosser, I see you've moved from South Carolina to Miami. Good job, Tommy Rosser. Tommy, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Nice virtual background. And look at the Welches. The Welches are at the beach. So the Welches are chilling at the beach. And how's the weather down at the beach, Shannon and Grant?
Beautiful.
Is it nice? I bet it is. It looks beautiful.
It is. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, look at there.
Nice and pretty.
Yeah, that's nice.
Oh,
hey,
boy.
can we see your face? Would that be all right? Can we see your face?
I'm actually sitting like way down low.
What's up, guys? Looking great as always. Dr. Mitch Reese is signing up. So,
Yeah, I'm here. Can you see
hey,
me?
where's the video there? Terry, the lights have gone out at Terry's place.
I'm videoing it.
Terry, you got power?
Yeah, I'm doing the video. I'm videoing it.
Maybe because there is no video. Yeah.
All right, so it's 12:01. We'll give it about 3 or 4 minutes. Then we'll start out. My guest speakers are going to be coming in here in the next few minutes as well. And
There they are.
what you got? I know, Alan, you're trying to say something.
No, I'm just trying to be the camera.
Alan,
What?
how did your appointments go yesterday?
Oh, they went good. We actually made some sales
Hey, how about it?
this month.
Congratulations. That should be a brag.
Yes, it's hard to make a living when you're closed.
Oh, boy.
Look at Leslie Cox there.
Amen.
Say, dude.
Leslie's looking great. Look at James Mitchell looking great as always in a nice orange shirt. I like that orange, James. James is the past president, my man James.
Got all that Wolfpack stuff back there, don't you?
That's awesome. My furniture.
Hey, Alan, we don't conduct business during meetings.
That ought to be a fine.
That's a $5 fine right there.
You'd probably be glad to pay it.
Yeah, I just happened to be up here, and I'm in about to start a Rotary meeting.
I'm going to do Alan a favor, and I'm going to mute him.
Closed.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right,
more minutes. Great to see everybody.
I don't know. How come you got David Spivey under your name there?
This is Rotary, District Rotary's account.
I got it.
Yeah.
Hi, Virtual David.
What's up? Alright. A couple of more folks logging in. Daniel's coming in with us. Meg, let's see, where's Meg? There you are, Meg. Is Ken on or is, yeah, well, no, you're in as Ken. Okay.
I'm on his computer.
It's okay.
I can't figure out how to change the name.
Okay, and I see a member, let's say that's GMOMB. Who's GMOMB?
No, that's Yvonne Bullard from the.
Oh, Yvonne, I'm sorry, I didn't see your video. Yvonne.
Jonesboro Rotary, right.
Welcome, Yvonne.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
G-Mom.
Yeah. Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Glad to have you with us. It makes it, all right, Grant, I got you, brother. Oh, look at Terry's dog, everybody. That's fantastic, Terry. We'll have to have a share your pet day at some point in time. Debbie Scott, what's happening?
Doing good. Broke my arm Thursday.
You broke your arm. Birthday, Debbie Scott.
I know. But technology is awesome.
Well, I'm sorry that you broke how did you break your arm?
I was having way too much fun, and I was in a side-by-side in Laurenburg,
Oh, I gotcha.
and we flipped over.
Daniel, unmute yourself, please, and quickly give Debbie Scott a 20-second tutorial on how to ride a side-by-side.
Debbie, where were you in Laurenburg?
At Outback?
Oh my goodness, I was there 2 weeks ago. I think I'm gonna go again this weekend.
I wish I could go. I'm kind of grounded here for a little while.
Oh my goodness, how did it happen? What part of the park were you in? Were you in mud?
Well, we were next to the big mud pit thing, kind of about a mile in. There's a ring that you can go with the side by. We don't know how, but somehow it flipped us. And good Lord had people right there, and they flipped us back, and we just traveled to the truck, and I went to the hospital, to surgery, lots of screws.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Man. Know exactly what you're talking about. I've ridden around in those circles many times. Man.
Just stuff happens, I'm ready to go, but I gotta have a cast for 4 to 6 weeks. Bummer.
Well, we appreciate you being here with us, Debbie. Okay. Mark, join us, brother.
I'm here. Just
Okay. All right, I know. Everybody got their grilled chicken and their green beans, mashed potatoes, and roll? Anybody need any Heinz 57 or any butter? Everybody good?
Salad bar was quite lacking, comparatively.
Salad bar was lacking? Okay.
Salad bar here was lacking this week.
Salad bar at Bill Morgan's house was lacking. All right. That would be Mitch Reese. Mark.
Who's listed just as iPhone?
Yeah, iPhone is Mitch Reese.
No, he's different.
Oh,
There's
okay.
one that's just iPhone, and then there's one iPhone.
For some reason, my iPhone isn't transmitting me, but that's probably all right.
Just the plain old iPhone is Bud Taylor.
Oh, is it? Okay, thanks.
And John Taylor, the Presbyterian minister, is joining us now.
I'm missing.
Okay. Mark, are you good, buddy? He's preparing our 50-50. That's what Mark's doing. Are you good, or you need another minute?
I'm missing 2 people.
Who are you missing?
I wish I knew. Let me look it over. Go ahead and do it.
Are you good?
Yeah.
All right. So right now I'm going to. I'm going to mute everyone right now. And so, welcome.
You asked for a...
Hold on a minute. David Nestor, can you mute yourself? Why can't I mute David Nestor? I'm getting background.
David Nestor is muted.
I know, but I'm seeing Nesto, whoever is Nesto. I don't know where that background noise is coming from. If everyone could please just make sure that everything is silent around them, that would be great. I've seemed to have everybody muted, but I'm not sure where the background noise is coming from. So just everybody, please make sure that you are muted. And we'll go ahead and begin. So welcome, and it's great to have everybody here with us today. We've got a few guests, and so it's great to have folks with us. Where's your face? Is that Joy? Was that Joy? Everybody say something.
Hello.
Who just said hello? I heard that.
That was me. I just took myself off mute and said hello.
Oh, well. I don't know where that, maybe we're being hacked. I don't know. Everybody's supposed to be muted, but I'm having some background music background. Does everybody hear background noise or is it just me?
Yes. Yeah, I'm hearing it.
All right, now that seems to be better. Everybody has heard everybody has gotten the information on Zoom meetings being hacked. So I hope that's not the case with this, but we will try to get through. No, I don't think, it's not feedback because I'm hearing people talk. So it's not feedback from my speakers. I'm hearing folks talk and cough and do certain things. But we'll continue nonetheless. So if you could please, we're going to get started. If you could please join me in our Rotary prayer. We're going to get started with that. Lord, we give thanks for the blessing of this day, for the opportunity of service above self, and for our daily bread. Amen. So if you can see behind me, I have the North Carolina flag, and and also I have Ramesses over here, and this is in honor of fellow Rotarian who passed away on Easter Sunday morning, and he was also my sponsor. So it's very today is the funeral, so I wanted to honor him. He was a diehard Carolina fan. He was a member of the Rams club and had season tickets to the UNC football and basketball teams at Carolina. So he will be sadly missed. Yes, Daniel, he will be. And so that's why I have that background today. I do want to welcome our guests today. We have District Governor Randy Perkins and his wife with us. And so that's Randy and Anita. I also want to welcome Terry from Jonesboro. Welcome, Terry. Good to have you with us. Thanks for sharing your little puppy dog with us. Yvonne Bullard, also from Jonesboro. Thank you, Yvonne, for being with us today. Debbie Scott, our district governor nominee, is with us today, broken hand and all. So welcome, Debbie, and thank you for being here. I'll introduce our guest speakers here in just a few moments, and we're happy to have them all the way from New York. But first, I have a couple of announcements. I was able to, with the board's approval, I was able to purchase a really nice Carolina blue and white spray for Polly's funeral and signed the Rotary Club of Sanford. Again, Polly had been a member since the 1980s. And so we did that, and we purchased that through Ted's Flower Basket here locally. And the total for that was $115. We also very happy, Randy, we were able to, or we're going to be providing the Jonesboro, along with Jonesboro Club, we're going to be providing the CUOC a check of over $7,000, which is our share of grant money as well as the district grant money. And that is an organization here locally that feeds underprivileged families and children. And right now, their volunteer is the folks volunteering there is down substantially. Their food is down substantially. They're having to purchase more from food banks. So very happy that our club is being able to give them a check of over $7,000. Obviously, with children home now from school, they're not able to go to school, and parents are being furloughed and so forth. So we are feeding those locally because of this pandemic. So very happy about that. And I know, Randy, you have an announcement.
Yes, I do. And first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. You know, this COVID virus is attempting to push us apart, but with Zoom meetings like this, it's actually bringing us closer together. So with that said, I'm really excited to be able to announce to your club our very first district-wide town hall meeting. And I have scheduled this meeting for next Tuesday at noon. I have invited Douglas Erlin to be our speaker. And Douglas is the director of the North Carolina Institute for Public Health. And I've asked him to talk about where we are with this virus in the state of North Carolina, where we will be, where we're going, and what is our expectations. And he will speak for about 20 minutes, and probably the very best part of the meeting, although I think you'll find him to be an outstanding speaker because he has so much knowledge about this, but the very best part of the meeting is that he will allow us to ask questions for approximately 20 minutes. So I hope that everyone can tune in next Tuesday at noon, and perhaps this could be your club meeting. I don't know what you have scheduled, but we'd love for that to happen. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Randy, for that announcement. I appreciate that. Any other announcements? Okay, bragging bucks. I'm going to start with our bragging bucks. Again, please keep in mind your bragging bucks will be due the next time we get together. So this will be my second one virtually, but I'm going to brag on, we have several physicians in our club, but I want to brag on Dr. Mindy Marlowe and Dr. John Mangum. I don't believe, John is normally with us. He must have had a patient today, but they are on the front lines seeing patients. Dr. Reese is retired and a couple others, but Mindy and John are there on the front lines. And so very thankful for them and bragging on all of our physicians, but specifically Rotarian Mindy, our treasurer, and Rotarian John Mangum. Any other brags? Okay, so Mark Midford, can we see your lovely Italian face for the 50-50?
Hey, wait a minute, I gotta brag.
Oh, I didn't see you there, Sammy boy.
Nobody ever sees me. I'm bragging on my wife for putting up with my crap for this long.
Okay. Well, I could have the same brag. Any other brags? Don't want to miss anyone. Laura Powers, you look fantastic. So happy to have you with us. Nice dog there, Bill Morgan. Mark Mitford.
Actually, this is my brag too. So
yes.
My family grew by 1 Cholula in March. So
very nice. What was the name again?
Cholula, like the hot sauce.
No, oh yeah, you like the hot sauces.
All right.
All right, Mark Midford, what's up with the 50-50, buddy? Mark always forgets to unmute. Unmute yourself, brother. There you go.
I did. I'm looking for some more names. Who's Galaxy S9?
Galaxy S9. Scratch it.
And I'm missing somebody else. All right, hang on. Give me 1 second.
So So the
Next mine is David Foster.
David Foster.
oh, David Foster. Okay.
Okay.
John Taylor, did you win anything from your 50-50 raffle ticket last week? $10. Hey, give it up for John Taylor. $10 winner there. Congratulations.
Dr. Mangum just joined us.
Oh, Dr. Mangum, I bragged about you, Dr. Mangum, for being on the front lines. Thank you for joining us there, Dr. John.
I heard it. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Give me
Mark,
one.
you ready? You ready?
1 sec.
I'm about to brag on Mark too for the background. He has the background four-way test and the background Rotary banner. So thank you, Mark, for putting that together for us. Must be listening to some nice jazz music.
All right, tell me when to stop.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, stop.
Number 11. All right, do it one more time. Ready, set. Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Damn. All right, so Alan Dossenbach and Tommy Rosser.
Alan Dawson-Bach, District Governor-elect Tommy Rosser, congratulations. Show them the tickets they've won, Mark.
Don't have them yet.
Appreciate it. You're either going to get a $1 ticket or a $5 scratch off. Who knows what you're going to get, but you are winners today. Congratulations. Fellow Rotarians, without further ado, I am super excited to have my friends all the way from New York State joining us today to talk about their personal journey with the polio virus. First, Lisa is a New York licensed psychotherapist in marriage and family therapy. She instructs and supervises marriage and family therapy graduate students from Syracuse University. She also coordinates clinical internships there. She also teaches in the areas of ethics, legal issues, professional development, family play therapy, and spirituality as they relate to the practice of psychotherapy. Lisa also provides ongoing consultation and training for community mental health clinicians who work with children who have experienced trauma. Last week, ACEs, or who are adjusting to caregiver disruptions. Lisa has been the chief executive for community-based nonprofits in Maine, Connecticut, Mark Mickford, your home state, and has trained and consulted at the local, state, and national levels for more than 20 years. Lisa lives in central New York with her husband, Dan, and her standard poodle, Gwenny. She has 4 grown daughters, 2 stepsons, and 8 wonderful grandchildren. I'm also going to read Dan's bio real quick, and then I'm going to give it over to both of them. Dan has been developing and leading companies and organizations in both the private and public sectors since 1983, with a concentration on business and business development. He served for over 20 years as the executive director of 2 nonprofits and has participated on many local, regional, and national boards as director. He began consulting in 2008, leading to the development of 100 Acre Consulting, a franchise consulting business located in central New York and serving customers throughout the United States and Canada. He's also a SCORE volunteer locally in 7 counties for business development and nationally for nonprofit mentorship. Fellow Rotarians and guests, please give a warm virtual round of applause for our guests, Lisa and Dan from New York. Thank you all. Okay, Lisa and Dan, if you could unmute yourself, and the program is yours.
Very good. Thank you, Don. I'm going to hand it over to Lisa first.
Hello from New York, and we really appreciate the invitation. It's the first time we've both spoken in the same venue about polio, and the first time I've spoken, excuse me, I have a New York winter throat, in about polio and about my dad in public. So I'm going to start. I had some pictures, and my dad's polio was during the 1931 outbreak. So I thought that might be interesting for you. And then we'll lead into Dan's, which was, of course, more recent. So let's see if I can get my screen shared here. We'll get going. So when I
Can you see that?
We can.
and everybody can hear, okay? So when I think about talking about my dad, the first thing I think about is being a little protective, because that's how I was raised around polio. That it was sort of a family story and a family thing, but really when we talked about polio, we talked about it in the family. We didn't talk about it outside of the family, and that's because when that outbreak was going on, it really was in the Roosevelt era, and it was kind of like you treat it, you get over it, and you get on with it. And you saw that in the video that I think Don shared with you to watch sort of prior to this. So I'm always aware that I'm talking about my whole dad and like all that he was. And so you'll have to deal with that, I guess, today. Okay, not just his polio. So let's see, I'm trying to make it advance here. Not sure why it's not. Okay, so this is my dad, probably about age 9, just before the polio, and just a normal little kid in New York City, getting into all kinds of mischief. In fact, his Italian nickname was Il Tempesto, which means like the storm, oh, here comes Il Tempesto. He was always into everything and very physical and very active. And then the polio hit when he was 10 years old. And basically the way it happened was, I'll do it sort of through his telling and through the telling within the story of other family members. The relatives were visiting and the kids were running around and just being kids, all the cousins in the house on a typical Sunday. And the last thing he remembered was feeling hot. And that's all he remembered. And then, sorry, I have to move the screen out of the way here. But when everybody had left, they couldn't find him and they were looking around for him, and he had crawled behind the sofa and basically slipped into a coma. And my grandparents knew right away that they should take him to the hospital, and that it was their great fear was that it was polio, and that's really what it was. And the next thing that he remembers was seeing his parents kind of slipping in and out of a coma, and seeing his parents through the iron lung film, maybe he called it like a film of plastic that was surrounding the iron lung and that kept people separate from him. And he doesn't have a lot of memory of that time or of how time passed. So some of this is just pieced together. But one of the stories that goes along with it is that his mother told him that when he was not expected to live, they dragged my grandfather, to the priest, and she promised God that if he lived, she would get married again in the church, because they got married at City Hall. And so he lived and they got married again, and his 2 brothers sat on the steps outside the church for the 5-minute wedding to thank God for him being alive. And then another kind of poignant memory of his was when he was back home after the hospital. He was still convalescing in bed, and they would put the bed out in the front yard. And this is in a Queens neighborhood, and they would put him out in the sun and sort of the fresh air. And he remembers people walking by and kind of like crossing the street and not engaging with him. And it was the first time I think he was really aware of how he had been impacted socially by the polio. And then, so what I've heard about his recovery was that he spent quite a long time in a coma and in the iron lung, and that he wasn't expected to live, and that he had really severe damage to his right leg and his chest. And at that point, they probably didn't know how much damage he had to his spine as well. And so he spent a lot of time convalescing. To the best of my knowledge, it was years between home and then between the hospital, home, and then a rehab center, which we think was either in upstate New York or the Catskills. And in this next picture, you can see him at that convalescent place. This is probably around age 12. This is actually, I don't know if you can see the mouse that I'm moving, but this is a body cast that he had on for, he thought, a good part of a year. And they kept changing it. So they would cut him out of it and then recast him to try and get his spine to be more straight. But you can see, even though he's a little boy here, this leg is very withered and underdeveloped. And this one is just starting to become what you'll see in later pictures was his really big leg. It was very, very overdeveloped. And he always called this his bum leg. So I just didn't even think about it until we did this video that it was the bum leg, which is kind of a, maybe even a derogatory thing to call it, but that's what it was. So my dad really changed from a body-focused little boy to a mind-focused little boy, and he began to develop his talent in science, and he skipped a grade in school. He won a science award in high school. He exhibited at the New York World's Fair, and he became just really interested in being kind of the person who would cure polio and, that kind of a scientist. And he was the first in his family to graduate from a four-year college and eventually get his PhD in chemistry from Cornell. And he became very renowned in his area of chemistry, which was organic acetylene chemistry. He wrote a book, and he had contacts in Russia. And eventually, when things changed from the Soviet Union to Russia, he was able to go over there and present and teach in a wheelchair. This little quote comes from a newspaper article that was done later in his life, and it's the last picture in this slideshow. Comes from that newspaper article, and where he just talked about his view of science as being magical. And I think that ability to think about life as magical and full of possibility was a big part of his resilience. This picture was taken when my dad was 25 and on his honeymoon, and you can really see how the curvature of his spine would really impact. So the right leg was much shorter and really didn't have much ability to do anything. He really used his whole body and his whole hip to walk and to use that leg more for balance than anything. And this leg became very overdeveloped. He had special shoes, and we all remember this one little chair where he would always put his shoes on. I have it in my bedroom now, and it always had a big shoehorn in it. And he would have this whole ritual of putting on several pairs of socks in just the right order and just the right thickness for him to be able to use a shoe that looked like his other shoe. This is a picture of my uncle, his brother, his middle brother, 3 years older, and my father on the beach. And you can just see kind of the development from the polio as he grew. He was always told he'd wear a brace, and for his whole life, and that by the time he was an adult, he would be in a wheelchair. And none of those things came to pass. He never wore a brace, and he was only in a wheelchair to get from one place to another very late in life, but he mostly got around with a cane until he was, dying, basically. He swam, he fished, he hunted, he played tennis, he played table tennis. We played backyard football, really rough and tumble, and we never thought about being careful with him. He just was not somebody who treated himself like life had to be careful with him. And, so I think I grew up thinking he was less vulnerable than he really was. And in some ways now I kind of regret that. I kind of wish that I had been able to relate to a more vulnerable side of him. But I know that that was very important for him to get through life and to accomplish all that he did. He had some compromise of his swallowing muscles as well. And so there would be choking and stuff that was just a part of life. And I remember the first time that I reacted to it and like ran to the sink behind my father because he was choking. And my mother just saying very quietly, sit down and eat your supper. And I didn't get it. Like I kind of didn't get what was going on and why we weren't all reacting to that. And it just became part of the way that we just responded to the polio. This is a picture of my father's brothers, and this is my father in the middle, and this is my father's first son, my oldest brother. And so, you know, we would splash around in the water with him, and he would throw us around over his head and everything, but he couldn't really stand up without help, you know, in a situation like this where the ground was unstable. So just that kind of the adjustments that he had to make. You can see the difference from one side to the other. So my dad hunting. And I remember walking with him and kind of imitating his limp because I thought, you know, like kids are, they want to be like their dad. And, you know, just those kinds of memories and climbing the stairs, the way he would climb the stairs. My brother remembers him taking 2 stairs at a time, probably to strengthen that leg that he just pulled behind him. And that he always, my brother would climb the stairs like that. This is my dad at 67. We have a camp in Maine. And you can see, you know, kind of the leg development. And you can see also that the chest is like, for most of his life was really underdeveloped, and the curvature of the spine became much worse as he got older. So, you know, this is the picture from the newspaper with the magical quote. And my father lived for 10 years of his life with my family and I, and my children have a lot of memories of him. And they were really glad to get this slideshow and just see these other aspects of their grandpa. And his arthritis and his debilitation became really bad as he got older, and he was really just bent over completely, still using that cane. I think there was a real thing for him about not getting in a wheelchair until he had to. But he was also super game, and he never refused to do anything. I mean, as long as I can remember, if you said, oh, let's go out, he'd be right there, and he'd be letting you drag him into a wheelchair and get him out of the house and go someplace and do something. He was never a complainer, and he was just a pretty amazing person. So that's my dad. And then I met the love of my life, which is Dan. And coincidentally, like I didn't even know this about him initially, he was also a polio survivor. And I just think that's pretty crazy that there'd be 2 people in your life who had polio, let alone 1. So I'm introducing Dan, and he can tell you his story.
Does that have to be on there? Can they see us?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they can hear you too.
Okay, hi. My story is, I'll try to make it a little shorter. First thing I remember was in 1962 in November. I was a little over 2 years old, and I was reading the night before, well, I wasn't reading, I was reciting the night before Christmas to the church congregation at a Thanksgiving thing. And shortly after that, I contracted. The muscles in the backs of my legs shrank. They just snapped closed. My heels were pulled up. My toes were pointed down, and my walking was done. They told my parents that they could cut the backs of my legs open, physically tear, cut, and stretch each muscle tie them back together, sew me back up, put me in a body cast for about a year, and then go into therapy. And hopefully I would be able to walk unassisted at some point later in life. My father, who was an avid sports person, just could not see that. So it was shortly thereafter, I believe in 1962. I think in 1962, there were 3 cases of polio in the state of West Virginia, which was where I was born and grew up, and I was one of them. I got the vaccine, and then I started with penicillin, getting sugar cubes of penicillin twice a week. Every week, I got shots to keep my immune system boosted. At some point around the age of 3, well, let me just regress. I had bars on my shoes with bars on them to pull my feet up and straighten them so that I would stretch the muscles in the back of my legs. Oddly enough, for some reason, they thought it was important for me to sleep all the time as well. And they had black plastic over the windows in my bedroom, which used to always strike me as really bizarre when as a 3-year-old. Now I am a reveler in sunlight. I guess that came from that. But anyway, I would crawl around a lot, obviously. And at one point, I crawled up to get something off a couch and lost my balance and stood there for the first time since I had contracted the polio. And there was a palpable hush around the room, and I continued to stand there. I wavered a little bit, but I stood. And then we went into therapy. Some of my worst memories in life, going into the bowels of the Kanawha Valley Hospital in Charleston, West Virginia, and following the red lines on the ceiling to the physical therapy, which was somewhere in the basement. And they would hook electrodes up to the back of my calves and send electric shocks through my legs, which just was, I'm sure I could probably, I'm glad I married a therapist. They would put me in whirlpools, a lot of deep tissue massage, which was some of the worst pain I had ever experienced. That was primarily my childhood until I was about 7 or 8 years old. And at about that point, I started really being able to do just about anything I wanted, other than the fact that I could not get my heels to touch the ground. So I ran around on my toes and spent, I don't know, probably until my 10th or 11th grade in high school, on and off as twinkle toes. But running on my toes made me faster than anybody else. And it's sort of a wolf kind of run. And I learned that early on. And I wrestled in high school. I played rugby in college. I have had a very physical life. I live on 100 acres, and I have put in miles of roads on this place by hand. In 2010, when I turned 50, polio jumped back up again, and my autoimmune system snapped, and it's because of the polio. I became celiac. I am totally gluten intolerant, cannot do it. I became I guess it's 1 out of every 2 million men gets scleroderma. I have scleroderma. And I have Raynaud's. And I also have very bad arthritis. My doctor informed me that out of the 4, the Raynaud's, scleroderma, and celiac can all kill me. The arthritis is the one I wish would kill me. But we continue. I wake up almost every night with the muscles in the back of my legs snapping and my feet jerking closed, and I have to scramble out of bed, hold on to something, and with quite a bit of agony, push my heels to the floor. But as soon as my heels hit the floor and the muscles are stretched, I can go back to bed and go back to sleep. But it is it does stand me right up in the middle of the night every time it happens, and it is almost nightly. And sometimes I'll be fortunate and get 2 or 3 times a night, depending. I have to keep an extra blanket on my legs because of the scleroderma now. And the scleroderma affects, and the Raynaud's shrink and make the muscles in the back of my legs worse. So it's kind of a perfect storm of, you know, having to deal with, but it does not stop me. I continue to do everything. I don't really think about it. I swear at it a lot. It has given me wonderful, colorful language over the years. But that's about the extent of it. You just do what you do. It's like Lisa's dad. Lisa's family. FDR. I mean, he ran the country from a wheelchair. We do what we do.
Lisa and Dan, thank you so much. Let's give them a huge virtual round of applause. We do have we have several minutes left for some Q&A. So if you have any questions, you may raise your hand and I'll get to you and unmute you, and you can ask a few questions if you like. But I do want to, again, we would prefer to meet together face to face, but this is one benefit of having Zoom, is that I could have my good friends from New York come and speak to us. I doubt they would ever have been traveling through Sanford, North Carolina, at any time in the near future to present to us on a Tuesday at noon. But here we are today. And I just want to remind everyone, yes, we are going through unexpected times with the COVID-19. Yes, it is a powerful virus. But we as Rotarians in the mid-1980s, we took it upon ourselves to eradicate polio worldwide. Very close to doing it. And the experiences that Dan had and the experiences that Lisa's father had, they're still happening today. Maybe not in the United States, but in other countries. So we can't just look at this as being something in the past. This is still something that we have to work hard and diligent to eradicate forever and for good. And that's one reason I wanted them to be with us today. So any questions, comments for Dan or Lisa? Yes, Yvonne.
My father had polio at 18 months old. His mother died at 2. His father was a farmer from Oklahoma, and they did what they had to do. He had 9 surgeries in the hospital as a young kid, as a baby. And so as a result, they had to pass him around from family to family to help, because the father had to go to work being a farmer. But anyhow, it was hard times. He had trouble finding jobs because he walked on crutches and braces. But he was paralyzed from the waist down. He never had a chance to walk on his own 2 feet without the braces and crutches. And so it had turned out that in the 1940s that he was offered a chance to go into politics. And so therefore he went into politics, and he held the same job for 28 consecutive years because people knew him and recognized him as the man who walked on crutches. But anyhow, I just wanted to add that he was born in 1906.
Thank you, Yvonne. That's fantastic.
He lived to be 85.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Yvonne. I greatly appreciate that. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Randy.
I just really appreciate them being here today and telling that polio story for both of them, because that really does bring back the stark reality of how serious and devastating this disease is. Thank you both so much for being here today. And I certainly wish both of you the very best life has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Randy. Any other? Yes, Leslie Cox. 1 second. I'll get you unmuted there, buddy. Go ahead, Leslie.
We do appreciate this program from these polio survivors. And just as a reminder, our own Ray Taylor, past district governor, was a polio survivor. And I think Randy, Dick Meiske who was a past district governor. I think he was a polio survivor. And then there was a guy from, I think Rayford, Jerry something. I was a Rotarian during those years. And when those guys gave a talk at a Rotary Club meeting, whether it was just a regular meeting or it was at district conference, thousands of dollars were raised because they had a personal story to tell. So thank you for your friends. This may be program of the year here, buddy. So you tell them we appreciate it. We appreciate all they've done, and they're in our thoughts and prayers. And it's nice to know somebody else has as good a vocabulary as I do. So give them hell up there in New York State, buddy.
Thank you, Leslie. Well said, buddy. I appreciate that, Leslie. A couple of comments that have been shared on the chat. Daniel Simmons, he is the Lisa. I sent Lisa an email earlier when I read her bio and about our program last week. And Joe, who is here with us today, and then Daniel, the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club here locally, spoke on ACEs. And so Lisa is obviously very well versed in that. But Daniel says, great presentation and fascinating stories of both individuals. Thank you for sharing. Bill Morgan says, thanks for sharing. Bill, do you mind sharing a little bit about Bill ran a camp in Maryland, and he says that camp started in 1930 for a program with kids with polio. Bill, what about that? Bill, unmute yourself, buddy. Sorry, unmute yourself.
Sorry, I thought I had. So yeah, it started in 1937. Camp Green Top started actually from the Baltimore League for Crippled Children at the time. It's no longer called that, but it was for kids. I would say like 95% of the kids that went there had polio, and it had at the first summer 120 kids, and they went for 8 weeks to Catoctin Mountain Park across the street of what eventually became Camp David. And they went at that time for, I think it was 6 to 8 weeks. And they literally, the first summer, loaded up everything in Baltimore on the back of horse-drawn wagons. And they went 70 miles, unloaded everything. There was around 80, I was saying like 120 kids and about 30 staff. And the whole principle was to keep kids active, get them out of the city, get them out of the heat, and also they wouldn't have the summer learning loss and the summer lost from not getting access to PT or good nutrition. Just kind of really, to me, is the amount of strength that people had and had to have in order to survive polio in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Is just hearing some of the stories were quite amazing. So I really appreciate y'all sharing as well. And also wanted to say go Cuse, originally from Syracuse. So.
Thank you, Bill, for sharing. Very much appreciated. Any other comments or questions for Lisa or Dan? Bud, okay, hold on a second. Bud, do you have a question or comment?
Well, first, very inspiring stories, and I appreciate their sharing. But another note, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, I believe, about the virus putting the vaccination programs on hold, and there's fear about what might happen. There might be a surge of outbreaks. But it mentioned Rotary and the World Health Organization, the Gates Foundation, and talked about the tremendous progress that has been made and the huge amounts of money that have been made. But it was a cautionary story about the effect of the virus. So we'll just have to see what happens. But a lot of immunization days are on hold, apparently.
Yeah, but I saw the same article, and that's just a part of what we're going through right now. But we hope to have those back up and running as quickly as possible.
Right.
Our treasurer, Dr. Mindy Marlowe, sent that article to me as well last week. So thank you again for sharing that. Any other questions or comments? Hold on. Hello there. Yes, hold on one second. You there with me? Brad? I can't hear you, buddy.
share.
I can. Just try to speak up pretty loud because it's breaking up.
Oh, wait, I know what's wrong.
Okay.
Wait. There.
Okay.
Now,
Much better.
now, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, I was just going to real quickly say, if I may, I shared this once with the club, but I'll share it again very briefly. That just 2.5 hours north of us in Whitfield, Virginia, I lived for 15 years. And there's a museum in Whitfield that I would suggest that if you're going through that area, that's I-77 north up towards West Virginia, to stop. And there's a wonderful museum that's got a lot about the history of polio. And this book called A Summer Without Children is one of the books that's available there. And there's, for instance, a story about one family who had 4 children of their family who had polio. Anyway, Whitfield was the highest per capita community affected in the whole country from polio. So that's not a distinction they appreciate remembering, but it certainly is part of that community. And again, that's in Whitfield, Virginia, where many children were afflicted, and many stories are told in that particular museum if you ever get a chance. It's a small town, easy to find museum. It's right in the center of town.
Thank you, Brad, for sharing that. And we've had several comments and questions, and we haven't allowed Lisa or Dan to respond to any of them. So now is their chance to respond to the comments and questions.
I just want to say that, first of all, that I'm grateful that Rotary keeps polio in the forefront, and that because of the way that my dad's generation handled polio, and kind of like people didn't tell their stories unless they were really sort of invited and encouraged in the way that you all do. And even then, it's reluctantly, and there's a certain amount of shame, I think, that generation took on polio that was really unwarranted, and absolutely, a virus is nobody's fault. And so I'm just, and it's so devastating. And what happened to people's lives, I think, goes on generation to generation. That stuff gets carried through in a family. And so it's just really important to acknowledge that. And the fact that you have people telling their stories is a big thing. Like, I can feel the reluctance to tell the story well beyond my father's generation, even though I don't think like that. So it's just really important, and things like polio will have a resurgence if you don't keep it alive. So
absolutely, well said. And we have several younger members in our group, in our club, in their 20s and 30s, that do not have the experiences that others of us do have with polio, with family and friends. But I will say, Lisa, just like you said with your dad, when he was placed outside, it reminded me of the 1918 Spanish flu, of influenza, when they would take all the patients and place them outside for the sunlight. And with your dad, when he went out and they put him outside and people would pass by. So you're right, there was a certain stigma with that virus, and similarly to the virus today, because you're noticing that when we get a report back that there's another confirmed case of COVID-19, they never say who, where, because they don't want to shame anyone and they don't want to create any sort of panic. And so, yeah, you're right. Contracting a virus is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. Well said.
My youngest daughter is Asian and is adopted, and she lives in New York City. And when this COVID virus first started, and people were, randomly wearing masks and stuff, we were really anxious about her not wearing a mask, because Asian friends of hers were getting beat up if they were identified with carrying the virus. There was all this stigma and pressure about, and she's not Chinese,
Right,
even.
Cambodian.
But
yeah.
Don, I just want to thank you, thank the group. This is my 3rd time speaking to a Rotary about polio, and it always seems the same. I walk up to the podium to speak. right after the person wheeled away in their chair from the polio. You know, I always feel very, very fortunate with how I turned out because so many people were just, you know, devastated by it. And, you know, I went to a chiropractor in 1984 and he told me that the way my spine was twisted from the polio, I would be in a wheelchair. I would be wheelchair bound by the time I was 50. You know, I turned 60 this year. You know, I'm still swinging an axe, using them all. So, yeah, you know,
Dan is a good friend of mine. We've traveled various places throughout the country. We're obviously in the same industry, but he didn't let his hair down for you today. He has, I call him Willie Nelson. And when he lets his hair down, it's in a ponytail right now, but when he lets his hair down, boy, he looks just like my man, Willie Nelson. So I want to thank you again. Let's give Dan and Lisa one more big virtual round of applause. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And I will say on behalf of our program speakers, Lisa and Dan, we do make a small donation to our county, the Lee County Partnership for Children and Families. So again, thank you so much. Club members, at this time, we're going to end. Lisa and Dan, you're welcome to join us. We're going to have the four-way test and we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. So Rotarians, give me 1 second here. We are going to, let me, hold on a second, share my screen. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry about that, folks. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Go. All right. So, if you all could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And let's end with our fourth test. To all concerned, will it build goodwill and better friendships, and will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you, fellow Rotarians, for joining us today. Thank you again, Lisa and Daniel. Please be safe. If you need anything, my mobile number is on the screen. Thank you so much. Take care. We'll see you next week.